Hello, welcome to Graphic Policy Radio. This is your host, Elon 11, and this is a comics podcast, which today is venturing back to the world of Young Justice Phantoms, the DCAU animated series. HBO picked up, and we have covered the show before. Season 3, we've covered the first part of Season 4, and I'm excited to have the same awesome guests returning to talk about Part 2 of Young Justice Phantom, because they did such a good job. When we talked about Part 1, I just had to have them back. So to talk about Part 2 of the certainly are watching. I don't want to presume everyone equally in the same headspace of excitement, but we're all still watching, is Dr. Khaliden. Khaliden is a writer and researcher with a PhD in media and culture studies from the University of Sussex. His work explores the realities of queer subjectivity, self-conception, otherness, and the intersection of culture and identity. Welcome back.
Hi. We recorded this right after the first episode, and it's all just conjecture and assumption.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's totally sounds like something I would do rather than recording it like a week plus after the season ended because we had an election. That doesn't sound like me at all. Did I mention we had an election? Okay. I appreciate our listeners for being patient. We had an election. Also joining me is Nathaniel Hubbard, aka Hub. He is a podcaster and writer. He's the co-host and producer of Tighten Up the Defense, a podcast where he and his brother cover Teen Titans and Defenders comics in chronological order, which is absolutely one of my comfort listens, and it's fucking hilarious. And I've been on the show a couple times now, but I said this even before I was a guest, and you should definitely listen to my episodes of it, and also the show in general. I mean, actually, I think one of the episodes that we did would be good entry point episodes for people because they're not super in the continuity of the comics series that folks might not have been following as detailed. Like we covered Young Justice issue 1, and we covered In a Lonely Place of Dying, which is kind of standalone stuff, right?
Yeah, I think that would be a great place for people to jump in. And also just, you were a delightful guest. So, it would be like you were holding their hand as they are submerged into the strange world of shit that comes out of my brain. So
that actually is how I got into the podcast, is when Miles Stokes was a guest on it. And I just think I lost my mind immediately at how good the show was. So,
oh, shucks. Thank you.
They are also the host of What the Duck, a podcast most foul, but with a W because he's a duck. That's the full name of the show. And Hub is a writer for Garden Plots with Skeletor, where he also plays Merman. He is, and this cannot be overstated, definitely a human man from Earth. Welcome back, Hub.
Glad to be back. Yeah. Excited to talk about this show. Definitely lots to talk about it. And
oh, yes.
Just always nice to I started to say see, but hear you guys. So
well, one thing I'll say is I began our first episode about season 4 with us having a little bit of spoiler-free reflection on whether or not people should watch the show and sort of they might like the show but this is us talking about Part 2 of Season 4, and I think there's literally no reason whatsoever to have any kind of spoiler-free conversation. So if you are not watching this show and are trying to decide if you want to watch it, go back and listen to my episode where I covered just the Season 4 Part 1, and then make a decision, and then listen to that and watch it, and then join us for this, because seriously, I don't know. If you've watched Part 1, you're going to probably watch Part 2. Is what I'm figuring, I think.
So are we in a spoiler territory now?
Oh, 100%. This is just
Connor lives.
I mean, we're not surprised, right?
No, we've been waiting for it. I was hoping to torture them a bit more.
Are we feeling good about it, though? Do you feel good about Connor being alive?
I am very mixed because I love Connor, so I was very happy to see him alive. At the same time, I do think it somewhat undercuts the theme of acceptance of loss and grief and trauma that so many of the characters went through, to have it be like, but he's okay. And so are all of the other people in this season who died. This season did totally psych me out. And I thought I was fooled when other people died in it. I knew that Connor was not dead, although I wasn't convinced he wasn't going to die at the end. But
yeah, same.
The other fake out deaths in it, each one of them got me to various extents.
Yeah, I hear that too. I feel like the most shocking thing for me about that last episode, well, not shocking, but the thing that like jarred me the most was how like everybody seemed to be like just super excited that Connor was here. I was like, well, I'd like a bit more trauma, just like how not horrible, but like how the shocking feeling that you would experience, if you discover that someone that you mourned so much has resurrected. But like, if, that was left to go, and that, yeah, I guess I agree with you, Hub, in that way, in that, it kind of felt like, I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I would say that you are correct that is the theme of this show and this season, but bad things do happen. Like, for example, Brion, as much as I do think he'll probably get some amount of redemption later, like Brion and Halo, they just were like, no, I'm not going to put up with your bullshit. Bye. So like there is loss in the sense that relationship and, generally the team's feelings towards Brion are over. They're all kind of, yep, that guy is a bad guy. We can't support him anymore. I'm trying to think what else would constitute as a loss, but that definitely, as I've been rewatching it, that stuck to me as like, oh yeah, no, that's hard. That was a hard thing that they had to deal with, at least.
Yeah.
Right. But there is still almost like when that does happen, you're like, yeah, Halo's not going to put up with his shit anymore. And they've got a rad new girlfriend now.
I know. Yeah. It's like all for the better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the fact that maybe we're questioning whether there were any losses at the end of it. I mean, one big loss I think would be the Fates. I guess the Council of the Fates. I don't know whether they have a team name yet. But they've given up parts of their lives to be able to share the helmet. And I thought that was that stayed as something really poignant. They didn't play with it as much towards the later half of the season, but like I think that brought up the theme in a really poignant and powerful way. I think, but the fact that we're, I suppose, trying to parse out when it's meant to be one of the central themes, I think maybe just at the end of it, the season might have benefited from just having sort of, oh, this was the big loss of the season, just to sort of really hang a hat on that theme and move us into the next phase. But at the same time, I think at the same time, watching it, I did get the sense that they weren't sure if they were going to get another season, so they wanted to like keep some happy endings or just to create some happy endings just in case, even though at the end sort of it felt more like a pitch rather than a guarantee, a pitch that I'm into. But I think maybe that's the tension that we're rubbing up against. But at the same time, I do think there was a lot of really good things about the latter part of the season, even if didn't bring it all home for me in the end completely.
I really enjoyed.
I absolutely agree. And throughout the series, I was definitely getting the impression, this is the last season. Like there is almost like this frantic rush, it felt like, to put everything that they wanted to in and be like, oh, no, we need to do this. We need to do this. And in some ways that felt a little bit hurried, but I was like, I want to see all of the things that you're putting in, but it felt a little bit disconnected. And then I don't know, like I said, I felt conflicted about, I wanted Connor to live. I didn't want any of these characters to die. So I was happy that they weren't. I just felt it undercut the theme a little bit. But overall, the ending I thought was really strong in terms of giving me those like, moments,
right?
Where you're just really excited. And then at the very end, like really the last 2 episodes were the first time where I even started thinking, oh, there might be another season.
The ending with the wedding, this whole season and this part of the season has been super interested in Shakespeare. So it makes a lot of sense to end with a wedding because they're having their Shakespeare moment.
Oh, I saw it as a Golden Girls moment. So I guess
explain that.
Fair enough. I don't even know about Golden Girls.
Well, every sitcom has to end with a wedding, and the Golden Girls specifically, like the last episode, they rushed into a wedding with Dorothy and Leslie Nielsen. So when a season or a series potentially ends with a wedding, my first go-to is the Golden Girls because I'm not as classy as Alana.
No, really did love foragers reading Shakespeare at each other long distance. It was very sweet.
It was really sweet.
And it felt more earned than some of the other literary stuff that they were, in part one. I was like, no, I believe it. Like, this is very in line for what Bug would be. Oh my God, how cute was Bug's graduation speech? That was so precious.
Adorable.
Like everything that Forager did was a goddamn delight. And also everything that Forager did was a goddamn delight. And I love Forager's relationship with Forager.
We have a Forager Green Lantern. I'm so excited.
It's amazing.
Where is that spinoff? I just want to see that little weirdo do things, save lives.
They are. I kind of, when Forager first was sort of developing their relationship with Bioship last season, and Forager was like, we don't have gender. I felt a little bit bummed when the show was sort of like, oh, that's a female Forager. I was like, why are you doing that? But whatever. We have an entire, significant non-binary character who they've finally addressed on camera is not just, by which I mean Halo, is not just non-binary because they are part mother box. They are non-binary because they are non-binary. So I was chatting with a friend of mine, frequent guest of the show, B. Khan, who could not join us today, to see how they felt about the show's handling of Halo just talking about their identity in this particular episode, which sort of felt like a debrief. Like it really was a debrief. And B's take on it was, how I feel about the pacing of that content this season is a different writerly conversation. But all in all, I'm a fan of where Violet's character developed and their non-binary identity feels more real. So that is to say, maybe it would have been better to not just happen in a debrief, but the specifics of what Violet conveyed were very well handled.
Yeah. Just to sort of, since we're on Violet for a second, I'd say that in terms of pacing, I think it's interesting how the aspect of their Muslim identity I felt like that was paced kind of really beautifully in terms of we're at an exploratory stage now. There's an interest and, there's a relationship developing. And I thought that was handled very deftly. And I think the last episode I talked about how it seemed like this season, they're very much engaging with the reaction to how Islam and Violet and Halo was being portrayed, specifically with all the deaths that were happening and just sort of all those tropes that it was bringing up. But I feel like they've taken that note and brought it to a space now where okay, let's actually think about what Halo's relationship to religion is, to faith is, and to Violet's mother is, and I thought the pacing of that, the fact that they've just opted to go slow and take their time with it, I thought was just great. But yeah, I do see that point definitely in terms of their gender identity, which is also really interesting.
If you're going to rush it and do it in a debrief, at least they said the right things,
Yeah. Yeah.
I gotta say, that's how I felt about a lot of the season. I liked everything that it was doing, but the pacing, there were a lot of moments where I was like, well, I like this after school special, but it does feel like an after school special kind of,
I will say that if another season is coming, it does leave us in a state that, I don't know, I'm interested into where they're going to go, because the one thing about Young Justice that I really love is that it seems like every arc ends with a clearing of the deck, and we don't really necessarily have it this season.
No,
so
because Markovia is a whole open thing. If they have another season, they're going to have to deal Markovia right away.
And I hope they don't rush through that, because it feels like they're trying to do something that could be interesting, but also, I don't know, it looks like it could be really messy but complex, especially with that scene that we got towards the end where they were, was it a scientist that they were harassing? Yeah, I thought.
I would think some government official, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
exactly,
some government official, because they were, wrong terminology, but everybody there were family flatlines, which usually, I advocate the bullying of flatlines. But
flat scans.
Flat scans, that's the one. That's the one. Goodness. It's late. It's late in the UK.
It's okay. No problem.
But yeah, and it seemed like they were going to do, it could get really messy, but it feels like, that's rife with potential in terms of how you try and do this story, especially coming off of Mars.
Yeah. It feels like they're really trying to do with Markovia. They're really not leaning into queer metaphor at all. And it's interesting to me to see a world where they're dealing with superhero powers and in some ways this is interesting because this sort of was like, hey, you know what? Marvel's kind of got this other take. We're going to do ours and it's going to be about fascism and strength. And that's kind of like, that's giving us something fresh, at least. You know what I mean? And I would rather have something fresh than have like a poorly done queer metaphor part 500.
Well, especially because they are at least making some efforts to have the queerness not just be metaphor.
Yes.
And I feel like that always works way, way better. And even some of the representation that you do get in this series, which I really do appreciate, I wish it was maybe not done in subtext in some ways, or with the caveat of like you said about Violet, yeah, they're non-binary, but they're also non-binary because they are a mother box that is living in a human body. Like there is still a science fiction like possible explanation for it. And I think it is handled well, but I wish they had done it maybe with a different character who is just non-binary because they're non-binary.
Yeah. They just need to introduce, that just has to be one of the other characters, like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I struggle because I feel like I completely hear that critique, but the question that comes into my head, well, is to think about like, well, is that sort of a trapping of the convention of the genre? The fact that we kind of work in that superhero metaphor? But at the same time, I completely agree with you that it feels like, well, why are we just going halfway when we could just tell the stories that we want to tell and also have them be doing these fantastical things? But I wonder whether that's the sort of the trap that they might be finding themselves stuck in. Not to guess too much about the minds of them, but yeah, I guess from.
No, I totally understand what you're saying, because like there are like all of the characters are weird space aliens and monsters in different ways. But when you have that as your only version of the representation of these characters, it becomes a little bit dicier. And another version where you place in the series where I thought for the most part it was handled really, really well and then didn't quite stick the landing for me was with the subtextual autism of Orion. I thought they handled the metaphor of it really, really well until the very end of it, where it did start to, for me, veer into like inspiration porn almost, where Rocket's big takeaway from it is like, no, he's an even better hero because he can overcome this thing that is wrong with him, rather than, I don't know, it was viewed as something to be overcome rather than something to be understood, almost. And that it was something that came in the context of his character specifically from the fact that he's genetically evil, you know? Like it was viewed as something that was a flaw in him that he needed to overcome. And I thought that muddied the metaphor a bit too much. And I don't know, that was the only part of it that didn't work as well for me, because up until that point, I thought it had been handling it very, very well. Okay,
so Orion is extremely important to me. I have an Orion tattoo. I may be the only person who does. One of the reasons why Orion, you know, as written by and created by Jack Kirby is so important to me is that he's part of this dynamic with Scott Free, where, you know, Orion is the biological son of Darkseid, who after the age of like 8 or so, maybe, is raised by Highfather and by the New Gods and in this nurturing and positive environment. Scott Free, aka Mr. Miracle, is genetically the son of Highfather and Avia, and from a very young age, like younger than that, gets raised by Darkseid in like the Hell Pits and oppressed. And, you know, Jack Kirby is there asking people, so is being a good person nature or is it nurture? And in this case, the way Kirby says very clear to people is anybody can be good. Anybody can be good. Biology is not destiny, for the love of God. Which is why, you know, I have a lot of problems with the Tom King Mr. Miracle book. Because it's extremely important that the answer to the question of are good people like born or bred, the answer is you're a person and we all have potential. But one of the reasons why Orion matters so much to me in the metaphor is that while Orion is a hero, he also very clearly in the text of the original comics struggles with his mood regulation. Like he is angry, he has a temper, he's brooding, and in the not even subtext of the original story, it's not autism. Like he has like a mood disorder or and possibly some kind of depression, but like, and he struggles with it. And he like, and he's a hero, and those are not at odds with each other. And in Hub, I think you're right that there's a question of like, is this inspiration porn? But like, to me, as a person who is neuroatypical, and of course there's a huge, like, what the fuck does that mean? There's like a million different things. I will say I'm not autistic. The fact that Orion in the comic struggles with being, quote unquote, a person who other people would enjoy being with while still being a hero is like actually extra heroic to me versus just for people who it comes easily, you know? And then in this series, I wasn't sure if I would be okay with them having it be a different issue for Orion. And while I'm not, like I said, I'm not autistic. I was like, oh, this totally works for me. Like, why not? Like, so long as there's something that makes him different, that is part of who he is, that other people would view as making it harder for him to be a hero. But that it's not that he overcomes it, although I can see how the text might say that. It's complicated. I hear you, Hub. It really did work for me, though.
I'm glad it did. For me, it worked right up until Rocket's speech at the end, where she learns her very clear "this is what the moral is" moment. And that was that was just the moment where it fell apart, which I was disappointed by, because I really thought up until that point they were nailing it.
I really did like her saying, I like wrote it down in my quotes. The fact that you fight against the darkness that seeks to consume you makes you more, not less, and makes you a hero in my eyes. And I'm like, that's like, regardless of that sounds like that's directed to someone with depression specifically. And I was just like, yes, thank you.
Well, just to pitch in, I will, I was just going to say, well, I am a child of Emma Frost, so I live in the gray. So I feel like I'm in between both of you in terms of my opinion. I thought that episode in particular, I guess I find myself aligned with Alana a bit in terms of like, I did find it really touching, and I thought, oh, this feels like a significant episode within the season, and that they put a lot of effort and energy into it. And so the intention of it really appealed to me. At the same time, Hub, I do agree with you that I think that the way it ended up wrapping up in the end, I guess, felt a bit discordant with some of the messages that it might have been trying to incorporate throughout, if that makes sense. But I think that ultimately the intention is what wins me over. But the question that I kind of found myself with at the end was, I'm not sure if the intended audience for this episode is me, a person who is neuroatypical, but also doesn't negotiate with autism, and only in so much as the people in my life who some do have autism and live as autistic people. Or is that intended for me, that person, or is it speaking more of how would my autistic friend react to this? So that is my question. Is I guess I'd be more suspicious of like, who did you intend this to be seen by? And I wasn't sure leaving that episode.
I know a lot of people have been critical of stories that center the experience of of parents who have autistic children over like what the kid who is autistic is experiencing themselves. And the whole thing with Rocket and Amistad, when it began, I was like, oh no. And so it was so good when they brought in an adult who was dealing with this and made it not just be about. But I could also totally imagine somebody still being upset about it, sort of centering Rocket's feelings in some ways. Yeah. That said, like, I had such a moment near the end of the series when Orion says, like, we should, in his wonderful frog-like voice. I mean, I would never have come up with that voice as the voice for him, but it totally works for me. And his straight up frog monster voice is like, Rocket should help us in this fight because her force bubbles will be most formidable. I had this moment of being like, do I ship them now? Do I care about this like man and woman like who are not in a relationship and who should be in one? Who even am I? This is not like me. Make it stop. But like, I do kind of ship them maybe. Oh my God.
I loved the portrayal of Orion too. I thought Orion in this was great. And I loved the way the other new gods reacted to him. And were like, oh, you don't like Orion? Well, that seems like a you problem, Rocket.
That's so true. Which is interesting because in the comics, it's not just a you problem. In the comics, like a lot of the other people are kind of like, I don't really want to hang out with this guy. Light Ray obviously does, but like, a lot of other, he doesn't seem like he has a ton of friends in the comics. So I think it's cool. It was interesting to see this change.
I mean, I hope that Black Canary has been up there, helping them all get along. I think that's really the source of it. That's why they're all getting along well. So she's not doing it with Young Justice. She's really leaving them behind.
There you go.
I'm glad at the end of the season, she was like, I should probably do my job.
Oh my God. Her therapy approach is just not how therapy works. I can't speak to her handling of the group meeting, but like her individual therapy it's just like, that's not how therapy works.
I just want to see some accreditations. Where's her website? I just want to know what the experience is, and then I'll let her wing.
Well, I will say I was very glad that Beast Boy was like, it's not just that he has a feelings dog or he's on his meds. I'm like, thank you. It is important to me that you mention that you're taking psychiatric medication. Applause. Okay.
I gotta say, did anyone his heart get struck with just a tinge of fear when they mentioned finding a place for all the heroes to heal? It just brought to my mind a recent story that I was like, I don't know if we're ready to fix this yet. Give us some time. Please let me breathe.
I'm kidding. Yeah.
Let me breathe. You know what? Maybe I'll trust Young Justice. Maybe they'll.
Yeah, it could be true. Like they could fix Tom. Like Tom King's idea at its heart is not a bad one. It's just that he Tom King'd it. So like maybe somebody else did that job. Sorry, fans. Sorry, John Arminio in particular. I know you love that shit. But yeah, it's just to sort of put a footnote on the Kirby piece though. As someone who's obsessed with the Fourth World, I never thought I would see such a beautifully rendered portrayal of New Genesis as we got. And then in this season, just the view of Supertown. I look at the tattoo on my arm of Supertown, and I look at Supertown on the screen, and I'm like, that's Supertown. They kept so much of Jack Kirby's art, but made it work in this medium. And I just respect the hell out of that visually. It's fucking amazing. I never thought I'd see something like that.
And not just Jack Kirby either. Like looking at that, I was just like, oh fuck, did Mike Royer ink this episode? How does that even work? I loved all of the portrayals of Supertown. The New Genesis parts for the difficulties that I did have with really just that one part of that one episode. I thought overall it was handled really, really well. And it was just exciting for me to see New Genesis. It was fun.
Yeah, and it feels like whenever they're really dealing with a Kirby sort of world, they're really you could feel them having a lot of fun just making these worlds. And also, speaking of just visuals, you reminded me of that little infomercial scene in Brion's Country. Do you remember
Markovia.
Yeah, I was just so excited. I was like, oh, I really want them to play around with style. I mean, you've got magic, enter new worlds, do something a bit different. I mean, they seem to really have fun when they're, so it'd be cool to see a bit more of that. But yeah, I just wanted to shout out that little old school cartoon style.
And one of the things,
go ahead.
When I finished covering Young Justice, the first issue of Young Justice comic, for Hub's show, I started, as did Hub apparently as well, a rewatch of the entire Young Justice series. And I was super vibing on the whole series, really enjoying it. My partner was a little bit like, oh, why are the earlier seasons better than what's happening now? And I was like, you're wrong. I will fight you. I mean, I see what you mean, but no. But then later on, if folks are following me online, you may have observed this. I've become completely obsessed with Our Flag Means Death. That's the only thing in my brain now, other than politics. And I, at a certain point in the season, was especially during my rewatch, I was like, I would much rather be watching Our Flag Means Death. The show is fine, but I want to watch Our Flag Means Death. And in the rewatch, the one time that I wasn't should I just be rewatching Our Flag Means Death? Which, mind you guys, I don't rewatch shows like this. This is not normal. The one time I was actually, this is really great, was the New Genesis stuff. So again, to me, that was just really, really stood out. So please don't take this as super critique. I enjoyed this season. It's just all flavors pale in comparison to my brainworm obsession now, but whatevs.
I can totally understand that. Our Flag Means Death is fucking great. I will say also, this season in particular, I would be very curious to see another season, because this season, as much as I did like a lot of aspects of it and loved certain aspects of it, it did feel disjointed in a way that makes sense, given both the structure of the show and I think the workarounds that they had to do in the making of the show due to COVID protocols and stuff. But I think they did a really good job with some of the workarounds, but it did still have kind of a choppy feel where every other season, I think, has felt like its own series. And this season felt like, in terms of comic books, more like a big summer event crossover that had a bunch of different mini series that loosely connected to one another. And
that's accurate. Yeah.
I liked it, but there were times in which they didn't quite match up as well as I wish they did. And like I said, like I think a lot of that was intentional, and then some of it was workarounds where you had like the PowerPoint presentation episodes that I liked more than I expected to, but still just seemed a little bit off. If there is another season...
You called them PowerPoints in a pocket dimension, which is just, I will never forget that phrase. I do love it.
Well, I mean, that's what they were. And I liked them. And I was like, I'll just, sit down and hear this little TED talk about the history of Atlantis. But if there is another season, I would be curious as to which aspects of this season they would want to replicate. Like, would they want to do another thing where it's like a bunch of miniseries, or would it have more of a central story tying everything together?
I mean, I'd hope it would be a central story, because that really is where Young Justice excels, is just that, just letting its plot go, and just like keeping us within that story. Yeah, I agree with you. It feels like a lot of the season was retooled to try and like deal with the issues probably that were involved in its production, which I guess is making me more sympathetic, not want to be as critical, but at the same time, this is a TV show that we all love, so you only talk critically about things you love.
That's true.
So I mean, I don't feel like we all want this show to have another season, because you know the highs of the show are like so amazingly high, and this season itself did have some tremendous highs and some great moments that reminds us of its peaks. But did this come across as a bit of an experimental season? And while like I appreciate it, I think, next season, just like do what you want to do. If you want to experiment some more, sure, because I do trust these writers to have some good ideas, but like maybe this experiment didn't work out as much as it could have. And I'm still interested in this world and this character, and I still kind of trust their story instincts. I want to see what they do.
Yeah, and apparently like the later half of the season got really, really strong viewing numbers. So hopefully they will be given more carte blanche to like do what they have to do in terms of budget, and maybe there'll be less like I said, very clever workarounds in terms of PowerPoint presentations, and nobody's lips are moving because they all use telepathy here.
Yeah. But like, looking at the earlier seasons and looking at this one, like, well, when you think hard, you can see the workarounds. The animation is more beautiful now than in the early seasons. Like when I look at Ms. Marvel's lips in season 1, I'm like, what is this? Some Hanna-Barbera shit? So, even with the reduced money, the aesthetics have developed. And can we just say when they first started showing Poseidonus in this part of the season, I was like, that's where the animation budget went. The animation budget went to Poseidonus. It paid off.
I'd say that final fight scene with Zod. It feels like they were saving a lot of their money just to be like, okay, we're going to give them this moment.
I mean, can we just say, fish people thruple? What a time to be alive. They're in an animated show that is, it's like, what is it? Like ages 7 and up or something.
And this is why we're here. This is why we're here.
Yes. Fish people thruple. A friend of mine and I started chanting this at each other at an event recently. He was like, I tried to get Mallory to watch this with me on account of the fish people thruple, and I came this close because she like never watches cartoons. But I was like, see, like there's a big audience for people for whom the fish people thruple is definitely the sales point, you know?
Well, and then it was like presented without preamble or workaround or anything. It was just like my husband and also, or my wife and also my husband. I was like, oh,
yes,
all right.
I'm so happy. Like, oh my God, the fish people thruple is having a baby, and like nobody's being weird about it.
It feels like, is that kind of like seemingly more of the norm down under? And I love that for them. I love that too.
I kind of wonder, right? Like, I did not think about this the first time I saw it, but in my rewatch, oh my God, I'm forgetting her name, Delphise. I was sort of like, so Delphise officially moved in with Calder. And
I was curious about that too. Like, and is she supposed to be Dolphin from the comic books?
You tell me, man.
I think maybe, and that would actually make sense for her character. And just like I would love to see them be part of a throuple too, if that's what they want.
It was cool that they brought her back. Like, another like Indian superhero.
Yeah,
I wasn't expecting to see her back. It was cool.
I was delighted by so many of the weird cameos and like Silver Age name drops that we got in Atlantis. Like seeing Topo, like who in the comic books was Aquaman's octopus pal, who he taught to like play the drums and the trumpet. And seeing him recontextualize as a different character was really fun. Seeing Lori Lamaris, and seeing her be a fucking badass.
Oh, I know.
I loved all of that stuff. I think maybe my favorite like Silver Age Aquaman thing that we saw in this was a return to the people of Atlantis being fucking capricious, fickle idiots. Who were like, we love Aquaman. Wait, a guy with a shiny hat? We love guy with a shiny hat. Fuck you, Aquaman.
Manta.
Oh my God. All their political system is trash. It's completely trash. And like, I can't believe we're expected to just not be like, you need to stop, guys.
This is what happens when you live in a world that's governed only by kings and queens.
I did like that Aquaman hot potatoed the throne over to Mera, though, at the end. I was like, no, I'm tired of these fucking idiots. Your turn.
Yeah, well, I had to, maybe in the rewatch, I really was like, this show is super invested in like Mera being this leader and this badass, and seeing that happen in the show while we know that the external DCU is getting rid of Mera because they're sexist and they've decided that Amber Head is a liability. It feels like really pointed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not intended because I don't think that like the tabloid attack on Amber Head was so thorough when the show was being written. But now watching it in retrospect, seeing a show that's like, Mera's great, and let's have more of her and expand her, juxtaposed with the acting situation where they're like, we're going to kowtow to the worst people in the world, actually, and do less with. It's really striking.
Yeah. I think whether it was intended or not, it did feel intentional.
Yeah. And it's like, and just to sort of go back to praising the show as we should be, I think. I think I think we've mentioned before is what's really great about the show is how willing they are to just make a statement to do something that not many others, especially within the DC EU or DC just world or whatever, not willing to just make sort of a grand statement of just like, okay, so this is our opinions and these are our thoughts. But just to double back a little bit to when you mentioned Delphise, is that right? Is that her name?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. When you mentioned Delphise, one thing about the show that I also want to take a moment to really just think about is how they sort of did develop this habit of introducing a character that seems like a cameo that like seasons later we get a Rocket episode and a Rocket arc, which is something about the show that I really, really do appreciate. So anytime I see like any of these smaller characters that you mentioned, I feel like, oh, they're seeding them in because I know eventually they'll have an idea where they'll be like, okay, this person's going to take over 4 episodes of the season. And that excites me. And so
totally.
I leave every season. Like I remember last time, how I believe you said that you really were not excited about the Mary Marvel thing that was happening. But like, I'm sorry, she's gonna team up with Kara. And
yeah, like, no, I'm all in. Like, I was wrong about a bunch of shit last episode. I was very clearly, I appreciate you guys not bringing it up, but I was way off base about my weird conspiracy theory about Beast Boy actually being Chameleon Lad. Like,
I said I was gonna let you breathe. I'm gonna let you breathe this time.
I appreciate that. I had to throw away all of my red yarn and the pictures that were connecting.
Well, Dick got all your red yarn, right? Like, or I guess it wasn't. Did Dick make the bard? There was a Zatanna, but someone else had your red yarn.
I'm pretty sure that was Dick. I gotta say, when Zatanna made her big statement, that's like, oh, if he's still alive, then we don't need a magician. We need a detective. I think because I had watched the Atlantis episodes and seen so many Silver Age cameos, I was so fucking stoked to see Detective Chimp.
I knew you were about to say that.
And I was like, okay, I'm happy to see Dick. I love the way Dick Grayson is portrayed in this episode, but he's no Detective Chimp.
Oh my God. Although, speaking of things Hub loves, I almost died from laughing when I realized that the Kaiser thrall was Danny fucking Chase.
Yeah. So they did a thing in this series that I didn't know could be done, which is make two of the characters that I was most sympathetic towards, Beast Boy and Danny fucking Chase. Like, I really liked this Danny fucking Chase. And I don't know how much of the heavy lifting was done by just giving him an accent. Because I was like, ah, poor kid.
He reminds
me of Sam Guthrie, and he's been beaten up by Darkseid, basically, and then shoved in a box. And like, when I thought that Megan's brother had killed him, I was just like, no, don't kill Danny Chase. And I had to like slap myself after that. It's like, wait, did I just say don't kill Danny Chase? That's the opposite of what I normally think.
That poor robot kid. Oh, I felt bad for them. See, I'm coming in as a relative newbie to a lot of DC lore. I know some. I know the big marquee stuff, but then I was like, I don't know who this kid is. He seems cute. I did find the tragedy. I'm dark-sided, so I found the tragedy kind of funny. He just got stuck in a computer. I was like, that is so demented. I love you for thinking of that, whoever thought of that. So I was into it. I was like, I hope this kid stays and just creeps me out with like his magic computer box.
Yeah, so in the comic books, Danny Chase is a character who I had heard nothing but terrible things about. Okay. And so decided going into seeing him show up in the new Teen Titans, I was gonna be on this kid's side. Okay. And then he showed up and he was like the epitome of late season cast edition character, the cousin Oliver, who is just such a cynical appeal to like, this is what kids like, right? We'll make him the most powerful telepath and telekinetic person in the world, and he'll be sassy, and he's a super spy, and he's like a smarmy little fuck. This is what you kids like, right? And he's the fucking worst.
Hey, it worked for Damian Wayne.
Ooh.
Oh, I said it. Come for me. It's at ALSO. No, sorry. Don't do that. No, I like Damien. I do.
Okay. I was just like, but like, like Danny Chase. I mean, I was so glad that I'm only aware of the character on account of Tighten Up the Defense. And I just lost my shit at how funny that was. Like, and nobody punched anybody in the dick. So I don't know.
Hey, it
worst things could happen.
So Danny and Bat might
happen.
Oh no.
Well, speaking of dark things, I did want to gauge what your opinions are when Megan was told to unleash her full power. Did anybody like just feel a chill run up their spine when that was the suggested given to her? I was like, that's a bad idea. I know why it's said, but no, to do that.
Yeah, that seems like if there are more seasons, I feel like they do kind of need to address and have it be like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have done that type of thing.
She killed her brother or wanted to.
Well, I wanted to kill her brother too.
He did kind of have.
Were either of you guys viewers of the Green Lantern animated series?
No, I've never seen it.
That's
the one I haven't.
So I have only seen a few episodes of it, but I saw enough of it to know when they had that episode where Razor just showed up. I was like, oh God, it's the Red Lantern from the Green Lantern show that was canceled. People were really bummed about that show being canceled. A lot of people really liked it. I didn't really get into it because it was 3D animation, and I just think 3D animation is fucking heinous.
Yeah, that's what turned me up as well.
But people were so excited that Razor showed up in this, and I'm so happy for the fans for whom that was really meaningful. Like, I'm so happy for you guys, even though it didn't mean anything to me. But I will say when right, like I'm like, I don't know this character, but I know this means something.
I don't know, but I love that for you.
I love that for you. But what he said that was like so funny. That was like, when he's like, he's getting the Red Lantern ring and the Blue Lantern ring together. And he's like, I am equal parts hope and rage. Like, there was literally like, my husband looked at me. I looked at me. And I'm like, yeah. And Franklin was like, yep, ultimate, political organizer there. Like, I'm like, yeah. Like, I was like, I guess I do care about this character now, huh? But yeah, that was like, I just like feel like that's now going to be my signature file for any emails I send from work. Like, yours in solidarity, Ilana, quote, I am equal parts hope and rage, quote. Like, quote, Razor, some Red Lantern or something from some show.
Exactly like that.
So the part of the show that I felt was made just for me was when they were in the Phantom Zone and they start singing the House of Zod song. And all I could think was, wait, are they doing the Music Man? Because it sounds so much like the cash for the merchandise, cash for the barrel goods, cash for the drag. And I was like, oh man. And it is because, okay. So I did actually say to myself, oh my God, they're doing that because Superboy doesn't know the territory and it's different from before. And then I was like, okay, wait, no, I'm high. And then I just need to go to bed now. But I did get very, very excited for the idea of an all Phantom Zone production of the Music Man that I thought might be happening.
I know just enough about that musical to find that funny. The whole like chanting thing, I was like, oh, this is all about fascism, and they're just going to straight up be like, I would thought that was a cool. I mean, that's the only interest. I think that's the only way to really make Zod interesting. But I also think that's probably the point of Zod in the first place.
I feel like you need to make him gay to be interesting. Everybody's more interesting when they're gay.
That's also true. I have to say, the show did such a good job of making Lore completely fucking evil and like just aggravating that like. I'm entertained by the fact that nobody took time to be thirsty about him, because I'm like, we hate you too much to care that you're handsome.
They tried their best. They gave him the Killmonger haircut and everything.
Yeah. No, and I don't know that they were trying to do that. I feel like it's a statement of the like, we can make him hot and you'll still dislike it. Like, yeah, that's good writing,
Yeah. No, like, he was some like
hot people are bad. Like,
he was like, despite his hotness, he also raised some pretty good points, but he was still just like about the Phantom Zone thing.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Like, yeah, no, you can't just keep like, he's a prison abolitionist. Yeah.
But not unlike in Black Panther, he's not the Killmonger and Lore are not the only people who are calling out the problem of the prison system. There are other people who are not bad guys who are also saying that the prison system is fucked.
Right. No, Lore Zod, I think, though, he fits the archetype of like Killmonger, and then also like, well, there's a ton of characters, but the one that always leaps to mind for me is the like the old bald guy from Night of the Living Dead, where it's like, you're not wrong, but you are an asshole. And so I was surprised at which like the extent to which it's like, yeah, you're raising honestly valid points, and I don't care because you're an asshole.
What is Zod's partner called? Their name
is Ursa?
Yeah, like just like from the movies or whatever. Yeah.
I will say that out of all of this, out emerged a green clad goddess who is maniacal and ready to fuck some shit up. And for her, I am thankful.
When I saw her, I thought Khaliden is going to be really excited about
Yeah, I was going to say, like, you like Emma Frost and you like that character? That's so weird.
The Emerald Empress.
Look,
Yeah.
I like to combat as many stereotypes as I can, but sometimes you just gotta let some things right out, you know? I loved her. I will say I did feel the need to have an issue with the fact that they made Zod black and they killed him. And I was like, should I? And then I was like, no, I'm just gonna let them have this one because they gave me Ursa. So I'm kidding.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
No, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, oh.
No, I don't think there's any deeper meaning there. I think they were just trying to do something interesting, bring up some of those themes in terms of like you were talking about.
So you don't think that they're black because it's a prison system critique? Like,
no, that's exactly why I think it is. I think exactly why you're right. I feel like I could make I don't want to, but I guess I could sort of make a point about like, how do I feel like whether that was effective overall? But I think that, it's a choice that they made and that's fine overall. I feel like that's how they wanted to bring up that theme. And I was like, okay, I get it. It did lead to watching more black bodies get hurt and harmed on screen, which is something I just feel like I need to note in terms of like, just so in case it becomes something that's recurring, because it's also like a critique that I had for the last season. Seeing brown bodies, suffer trauma. And if that's how we're ending our season again, that's fine, because I feel ultimately it's fine because not fine, but like we also got Rocket in a really heroic role and she's a black woman and, she was instrumental to the final fight as well. But if the A plot is about, the Jesus metaphor, who was Superman, and all the white Christian connotations associated with that. And then we have that being paralleled in the Return of Connor in that story. And, all those things. I feel like you're working with murky territory that, I think it's worth just like acknowledging.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, the other big Jesus thing was the whole Tomar Reed death, right?
Yeah.
Oh, man. And that was the moment where it was like Zod is just like, oh, no, definitely fuck this kid into the womb. Like that, when he's like, hey, I knew your dad. Oh.
That's fair enough.
That was his like Morris Day from Purple Rain moment where he comes into the dressing room and was like, hey, kid, how's the family? Oh,
that's so good. Morris Day. He fought Moon Knight in a Declan Shelby Warren Ellis issue of Moon Knight.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I think it was one of theirs, but yeah. Check out the Moon Knight episode of my podcast, guys, for more about that time that Morris Day fought Moon Knight. Anyway, he exists on both worlds then. He's
a cultural universal.
Is he amalgam? Come on, give us another one. Let's see what I'm completely off topic, but would you just like to see what an amalgam these days would look like? Just with I want to see I'd like to see what the contract for it. That's besides the point.
One thing about the ending with that is I was not super invested in the question of what was that smear on the wall in the cavern where Superboy died. But then when we saw that it was lore, I was like, oh, that's actually really smart. Because I feel like my appreciation of how the mystery structure of the series didn't really settle in until my rewatch. It was funny though, when the whole thing with Metron ends up saving Rocket, it's a machina ex do, if you will.
Oh, Metron did. I honestly, like that part of my brain, I think just got turned off at that point because I remembered it as Rocket just being like, I'll explain why I'm not dead later. And then to me, her story ended there.
Oh, I know. Like, it was connected. It connected right back to the thing with Metron. I mean,
gotcha.
It didn't do it in a way that felt like it was hurting her agency or heroism at all, as I saw it. But yeah, it was connected back to the whole thing with Metron. I thought Metron was so good in this also, and I have lots of Metron feelings. But Metron just showing up, be like, motherfuckers were going, no, I'm not explaining things to you, keep moving, and just being like a dick the whole time. And then when Metron got tortured, I I've always said in the Diamond Dogs, New Gods mashup that exists in my mind of my favorite things, Metron is obviously played by David Bowie. So I was kind of like, please stop torturing David Bowie. But that's literally an Ilana headcanon that is probably not something anybody working on the show had in mind.
I mean, what do we think of potential of them returning back as evil? As like the primary. Darkseid is just sort of like the Metron.
Oh.
Because it felt like, that's a thing that might happen. And like, I gotta say, I've never been the biggest sort of Darkseid fan. So the fact that like he's always in the background, I mean, I have no strong feelings really.
The whole
he's always in the background. I just want someone else.
I was just disappointed that he didn't sit in any easy chairs.
Easy chairs, I know.
Because that's my favorite thing that he does.
Yeah, the whole point of Darkseid is to just be in the background and sit in a living room and be terrifying. Because he symbolizes the potential mundanity of evil and fascism. I'm sure they're going to do something. Him and Vandal Savage, they keep kind of being in and around it in a way that when they finally get to do it, I feel like it's going to really pay off.
Yeah, maybe I just need like a new person to emerge as like a shadowy figure that's also in the background that we've not really thought about now yet. Just sort of to add maybe a third head to that trifecta, whatever.
Speaking of the prison metaphors, like the whole thing with the Orm clone, where they were like, oh yeah, no, this whole prison thing's been bad. Oh, and especially because you weren't supposed to be here. But any Orm clone feelings or Orm feelings more broadly?
That was the part of... I felt really similar to the Atlantis arc, to the way that I felt about the opening Mars arc, where it's like, there is so much really interesting anthropology that you're trying to cover here. And then you have put this murder mystery, political intrigue thing on top of it that is making it a little bit hard for me to follow because I don't really care about that part as much. I just want to hang out in this place. I
agree. Yeah, I completely agree.
I appreciate the world building and I like it, but it's like, I don't care about the mystery that you're solving. I just want to hang out with these characters. And you made the mystery, I think, maybe a little bit too complicated for the amount of time that we are spending here.
And there were so many little bits and pieces of political handles and the Poseidonist stuff that could have been grabbed and had been expanded on that I'm kind of bummed. Nunavish arc or whatever, who's clearly the asshole, is very clearly our waters are warming and we must take more territory because our waters are warming and it's the surface dwellers. And I'm like, yes, get our asses about climate change. We deserve that.
Yeah.
And then you have the whole political fight of like, your political system is trash. And then you had your brother in jail for forever and you weren't even trying to process that.
I did think it was interesting that they gave like, they seem to be like focusing on different characters for different arcs. And for the Aqualad arc, like his problem was, Aqualad has job interview flaws. Like what's wrong with this character? He works too hard and he cares too much and he tries too hard.
Yeah.
I did feel like a large part of the cast that we're really familiar with was just sort of sidelined. I think that's also maybe a product of, like we were talking about, the way that the season is structured into seeming like 4 different parts. So just some people just disappeared for a while and I really missed them. I missed them being part of the ongoing story. I feel like we ended up leaving a lot of character moments, which is what the show really does well, behind because we didn't have enough time with those people. And in its place, I think, speaking about that specific story arc, I just kept finding myself thinking, well, this is entertaining, but I kind of wish we were going back to another person whose story I'm more interested in, or that this one was really deeply tied to the other stories that I'm really interested in. So it could bring up the themes that it's trying to do rather than trying to make him exist as separate from it.
It felt almost like a pilot for an Aquaman show that was like, at the end, they're like, and we'll tie it into this. Like, and then there's a column of flame. Remember columns of flame? They're part of this, huh?
Yeah.
I don't know. I did like, I feel like I'm nitpicking here and there are nits that I'm picking, but I did like the show.
For sure. No, we kid because we love. What did you guys think of the intervention scene with, like, the failed intervention scene with Beast Boy? The voice actor that they used for Robot Man was another good example of that was not the voice I would have gone to, but God, that they make the right choice. Do you know what I mean? And having all the Foley noises clicking when he was talking was so fucking hilarious to me. They're just like falling and robot noises of gears turning while he speaks. So yeah, I don't know. What do folks think about the intervention scene? I like that it failed because that's what they do. They fail.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, I liked that it failed, and I liked it in the same way that I liked that Gar was gaming the system at the end with Black Canary, where it's like, yeah, no, he knows the lingo. He sees what you're trying to do, and I appreciated that they didn't make it so pat. The weird thing for me about the intervention scene and Robot Man in particular was, wait, Doom Patrol happened in this universe too? When? Like, there's not time for a Doom Patrol given Gar's new timeline. And like heaping like just like, oh, and also when you weren't paying attention, I guess between seasons when he was, I don't know, let's say 11, he joined and formed a different superhero team that all died. Like, I felt like it's playing with the having access to all of the comic book continuity, but deciding that it isn't really part of it until you decide that it is again. That I think DC does a lot in general with their constant universe reboots. Yeah. But that in this show, I felt like they had been fairly consistent about not doing that as much. And I was like, I'm sorry, but I love Doom Patrol. There was not time to have a Doom Patrol there. I just don't see when they could have formed a team and all sacrificed themselves already.
I know, right? Yeah.
And who was in the team? Like, what is the constitution of this Doom Patrol?
Right.
That's what I wanted to know.
There better be a drag
another
queen.
spin-off.
I mean, I guess it could have been like the late 70s Doom Patrol. Like, because there was like a whole new team at that time that Robot Man was on that lasted like 3 episodes that was before the 80s reboot. So maybe it was that team that he joined and they all died.
I'd like to talk about what is the state of Gar now? Like Beast Boy at? Where is, what is he okay? He's not okay, right? Like he's lying, right? I'd like him to be lying. I do.
No, I don't think he's lying. He's not like quote unquote better. Maybe I'm like projecting or something, but he's taking his meds. So he's like making an effort to be better. Yeah. So at least I'm not thinking he's better, but like he's not faking it like he was doing before.
It must be. I wish there was maybe like a little bit more addressing of the idea of like, wait, I went through all this stuff and now Superboy's back. Like, see the pendulum swing the other way where he's just like, and soon Wally will come back and then my mom will come back. You know, like.
Yeah, mania. Take it like really explore that idea.
And it would make sense like for him to do that, just where it's like, wait, all of these people, like in just the last 2 issues of this, like Superboy was dead and then he wasn't. Dick Grayson was dead and then he wasn't. Rocket was dead and then she wasn't. Danny Chase was dead and then he wasn't. Like maybe all of these other people aren't dead too. Or maybe that makes him double down on his like, now I really am actually literally mad at them for being dead because why don't they come back if it's so goddamn easy? Like,
see, I say I'd like him to be faking it just because I feel like, given the great disproven theory of Hub of 2022, this is my.
You're going to need to be a lot more specific.
The Great Beast theory. The Great Beast. Oh shit, fantastic. But yeah, I would. Because you mentioned also about that earlier scene of the failed intervention and the way that Gar was like gaming Black Canary and gaming them and trying to like find an in. And I think thinking about that in the context of him as an actor, as a performer, as like this child star and this appeasing figure, I think that's where I take the story is to have that last moment really seem like, oh, we're heading towards something better, but actually show what depression is like, which is peaks and valleys, and what mourning is really like. And like you mentioned also how the trauma of having what you thought was happening no longer happening, and then just trying to understand and deal with that. I think there's some really interesting potential. And like I said, given your disproven theory, now we find ourselves in a situation where like, okay, so if we go back and rewatch the season and just focus on Beast Boy, we end up having this really, I mean, we talk about how so many of the things about the season, unfortunately, very quickly paced. With Gar, it felt like, okay, this is the journey that he is on this season. and he doesn't necessarily, it felt like he wouldn't necessarily come out of it at the end, completely like better and resolved. It felt like, this darkness is an element of this character in a really important and profound way that they have to now learn to come to terms to. And I'd really like them to commit to showing us that with this character, because, I think amongst all the storylines and all the amazing and interesting sort of paths that this show has taken, I think that is one thing that maybe they haven't done as explicitly and fully yet. And I think there's just a great opportunity.
My new conspiracy theory is that his corgi is really Desaad.
Oh no. Oh
the corgi is really Beast Boy, and the Beast Boy.
Oh no.
It's all reversed. Name a shapeshifter. That's who it is.
Oh my God, you guys are the worst. Look, here's the thing. I think that Gar, they're not saying that Gar is like all better. They're saying that Gar is in making a genuine attempt at recovery and like trying to do better. Like, to me, the implication is like, he has an emotional support animal. He's taking his meds. Like, they're not like, everything's fine now. These like, we're like, he's taking steps to improve his situation. And that doesn't mean that like, he still suffers from depression. He still suffers from trauma. It's just that he's like approaching it in a way that's not completely self-destructive. Sure. I would be fine with him having like backpedaling and, like his ups, peaks and valleys and better or worse or whatever. But I do take it on face value that he's at a place right now where like he's at least he's putting in an effort towards healing and towards putting in an effort towards being in a better situation rather than just lying about it.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned name another shapeshifter that could be associated with Gar. There was, related to shapeshifters, what was, I'm pretty sure, supposed to be like a record scratch moment where we find out that the planet that Megan's brother gets is Durla, and it makes the name, and it's supposed to be really ominous. Did that name mean anything to you guys?
Wasn't it the name that was mentioned earlier that episode about like, oh, no, did I make that up? I'm probably
thinking of Danceonite or whatever.
Okay, for some reason I took it as like, oh, so he wound up the planet that's going to end up ruining the world, and so time loop stuff.
I just wasn't sure. It just like they dropped it with such like a like clunk, like Durla, get it? And I had to look it up. That is the planet that Chameleon Boy comes from. So it turns out that his people are going to evolve or turn into the Chameleon Boy people.
Wow.
Eventually, which I thought was kind of interesting, but like I'm a pretty big comic book buff, and I needed my hand held through that way more than they were giving me.
Wow. Yeah. If even Hub doesn't know, I don't know, man. Well, I guess my question would be about the time travel stuff. Like, I know that I, for one, am too gay to understand time travel, as they sound so their cast. So, like, what did folks make of the time travel plot lines? And are we all too gay to understand time travel? I'm willing to accept that also.
I come out as too gay to understand time travel too. But I will say I would have liked more sort of hidden Easter eggs. Like I would have liked that at the start of the season, of things to be like to catch on a rewatch. I think that would have been a bit more fun. But those are my general impressions about the time travel plot. They're always difficult, right?
Yeah, I feel like there wasn't any time travel stuff that like stood out at me as particularly glaring. There wasn't anything in the time travel thing that like pissed me off or was like, that is totally inconsistent. That wouldn't have worked that way. It's just the general noise that time travel makes in a story in my head all the time, which is just like, I don't know, the song that mice play when they're building a robot in an old cartoon. It's like, okay, there's time travel happening. Good enough.
Damn it, now I need to know the name of that. Like, this is going to kill me that I can't remember the name of that piece of music.
I looked it up. It was a guy who was a composer in the 20s and 30s who wrote a lot of stuff for cartoons.
I really love you. I love you, Hub, for looking that up. I love the fact that you looked that up. I really do.
I had it stuck in my head when I was on a road trip with my wife.
You are truly my people. Like I understand you so deep.
Thank you. I'm so angry at myself right now for not remembering who it was.
Boy. I liked that the Saturn Girl, Chameleon Lad had and Kid and New Kid Flash, Impulse, what have you, they had like about 1 minute of total badass trying to save themselves from when Lore showed up on the plane, and Lore wins in the end. But I appreciated that the show took a minute to like have them not go down like a chump. Like they did not have to gotta be a sucker, as they would say on Titan the Defense. Like they actually did come really close to like winning that fight and not getting kidnapped. They came really close.
They did. I like those kids. Also, we got to see Brainiac, little Brady. Then his name's Brady, right? I always love a nice Brainiac. It always takes me back. I'm like, oh, you're my little alien, my first alien crush.
Oh, from the Teen Titans show? Or?
Yeah. I love her. Anyway, as you were.
That's sweet.
I love a smart person. I love a head. I love a head.
I mean, yeah. Smart people, pretty cool. What can I say?
Is Megan going to go evil next year? That is the eternal question. Is it happening now or later?
I wouldn't be surprised if the show doesn't kind of sort of move away from her character now, because she's been such a big protagonist for so long.
Oh
that
my
I
God.
could see them deciding that with their huge expanding cast, like she's had her story arc. I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to make her be pregnant or whatever. Or like, frankly, like I think it's awesome that Rocket is a mom and is kicking ass, by the way. And a single mom with like, a good co-parent husband for obviously, but like, yeah, I could see her going away, to be honest.
I hope they find a way to like, I want someone to like really put in the effort to try and continue making like a married comic couple interesting, and so I'd like them to stay the focus.
Right.
Yeah. For some reason, when you were talking about that, the first thing that popped in my head was like, oh, they brought her sister over to replace her. That sucks. That sucks for Megan. They brought the young Billy in to like replace her. I was like, no, Megan deserves better, even if she doesn't.
What's her sister's Earth name again? Because in my mind, it was just Jenny Jones, and I know that's a different person.
Avery? Is that Avery? Am I making that up? Someone else is Avery.
I don't remember her name, but she's Princess Bubblegum from Adventure Time. Who's also a girl scientist. I talked about this before, but I'll never stop. I love that they cast a voice actress who plays a girl scientist in another show to be the girl scientist in this show.
Well, when you were talking about Megan turning evil, I think if they do that, they will have to give her a bird-themed code name, because when you have incredibly powerful telepaths who turn evil and threaten the universe, you gotta give them a bird code name. Dark Phoenix, Raven.
Yeah.
That is how you know you are dealing with a maybe women shouldn't be so powerful storyline.
Yeah.
How about the Scarlet Phoenix? Okay, so I'm just trying to ruffle some feathers. I know y'all listening, nerds. No, I say that I'm among.
I mean, obviously. I guess questions, guys. I thought bringing in the Infinitors as opposed to Infinity Inc. for Markovia was kind of a cool touch. I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes.
I think Infinity Inc. did call themselves Infinitors. Like, I think that was what they called themselves, like, as a team. But yeah, no, I thought that was an interesting touch. I'm curious as to what's going on in Markovia. It feels very familiar, like in terms of like Genosha, but every time I think I know where like this show is going in terms of stuff, they do at least put interesting twists on it. So I would be curious. Like,
I was just going to say that, and I will say that we've been kept so far away from Markovia and Brion this season that it was, I didn't remember how I really like left feeling about him as just a character. And I felt like, seeing that scene with Halo felt really welcome. And I also really like Rosa Furiosa.
Oh yeah, she's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what role she's going to take on in this arc that's coming up, and I really hope it's big because she just seems fun.
I was not familiar with the character at all before, and I
Fury,
really
right?
like her.
Like,
yeah, I'll say something about her gave me new gods. Like, I feel like she's part of the Kirby world.
Oh yeah, she looks as she could be a female Fury.
Female Furies.
Yeah,
like,
Yeah.
So, but I agree. Like, she's super cool. I love her. She's huge. She has a big evil glove, and she just shows up to Orion and was like, I think people are fucking with you, and you could probably use an ally. Let's go. Just being right up front there. She's wonderful. Oh God. And of course he's dealing with that mind manipulator guy who, did you guys watch Aeon Flux back in the day or at any point in time?
I did, but I don't remember. Like I watched it as part of the like liquid television thing.
Yeah.
But
so
not its own show.
I haven't revisited the show, but Aeon Flux, I fucking loved that show.
Yeah.
And the ambassador who's clearly using some kind of powers to mind fuck Brion and everyone else who he encounters. Totally was just pure Trevor Goodchild vibes in even the character design. I'm like, this has to be, but the voice, I mean, he has a different accent because Trevor Goodchild has like a Britishish accent in the show versus in this, he's got this like Latvian. I mean, basically everybody's speaking Latvian, by the way. This is basically what Markovian is. Different accent, but like the voice is very similar and the look is similar. They're both these who view themselves as benevolent dictators very much. And it's going to be interesting.
I wonder if they are doing Infinity Inc. I wonder if like he's going to end up being like Brainwave Jr. or something, you know?
Oh, I know nothing
that was the guy who was evil who did mind control. Or was he? I don't even know if he was evil. He started off as a hero and then he turned evil because if you do mind control, then you end up being evil, which makes sense.
I will dispute that theory, but go on.
Oh, right. I'm a fraud.
I am now instantly convinced. That's weird.
Interesting, isn't it? Watch your step.
I will watch my step.
I didn't want to keep threatening you this episode. I'm sorry. I'm not a violent person.
Well, I want to thank you guys for joining me. This has really been a pleasure.
Can I ask the final question?
Mm-hmm.
So what are both of your hopes for next season?
I mean, I want to see what's happening with Markovia because I think it has potential to be a good and useful metaphor for fascism and the appeal of fascism, particularly to men who might find themselves in an emotional time of crisis. I mean, think about it. Like Connor fell for the fascism because he also was in this like emotional crisis.
Right.
And then the other piece of it is Mary Marvel and Power Girl. They better have sparks flying and being awesome and being evil and
I'm so excited for Kara. I just want to know what that. Oh, I'm just excited. I'm ready. That was like a twist for me. I was like, did not see that one coming. I'm ready.
And we saw Big Barda in the background in that scene too. And so I want to see more Big Barda. I want to see. I don't think 3 is enough. I think we need 8 Aquamen. And I honestly want to see more about like the magic team that's taken over Dr. Fate and, maybe a few more Pocket Dimension PowerPoint presentations.
Yeah, I agree there. I'd like Cheshire back. I'd want to see her in the mix again. And I want to see the sisters. I thought that was one of the strongest stories. I felt like that's what I like really have a memory of. So I'd like Artemis and Cheshire. And I forget her name, but that badass person that ended up going away with Cheshire to that common thing.
Oh, yeah. Amazing Man's granddaughter, right?
Yes. Onyx, who's on your mood board. Okay. That was one of your moments was like, Onyx, you want her on your mood board.
I have her face in my head. I forgot her name, but I know her heart. So yeah, Onyx. I want Onyx back. I think she just what we saw of her, what little we saw of her was really cool. Rosa, I think, is interesting in Markovia, like I said. I think there's a lot of interesting potentials for next season. So I can't say anything other than I'm really, really, really excited.
Thank you. I mean, this has been a pleasure, you guys. Like the whole time I'm watching the show and kind of being like, but our flag means death. I got to also hold out. But I get to talk with my friends about how this, and you guys are such a delight. So thank you for joining me again. You. Tell our listeners where they can keep up with your work, Khaliden.
You can find me on Twitter at alsopurp, ALSOPURP, and on my website, which is www.alsopurple.com.
Fabulous. And Hub, remind our folks where they can keep up with you.
My podcast is called Tighten Up the Defense. My Patreon only podcast, if you donate to Tighten Up the Defense, is called What the Duck, a podcast most foul, but with a W because he's a duck. That's the full name of the show. And the show that I write where I play Merman
who has a voice like this, which is really fun to talk in,
is Garden Plots with Skeletor, and season 3 of that should be coming up pretty soon.
Nice.
So, yeah, and if you can't find me in any of those places, just look inside your heart. I'll be there. I always have been.
Aw. And as for me, I'm on Twitter a little bit too much at ELANA_Brooklyn. That's Ilana_Brooklyn. For the Marvel folks in the room, get ready. We will be having much more Marveliness. I know you guys probably don't even trust or believe me that I could do that anymore, but I have amazing guests lined up for talking about Ms. Marvel. We'll be talking about it at the end of the season. And I'm putting together my episode for Thor 4. And as we like to say, keep it geeky.
Hey, thanks for watching the previous video from Graphic Policy Television. Just by watching, you help support our site. Thank you so much. Now, if you're watching these videos, you probably care about geeky things like movies, television, comic books, toys, games, video games, you name it. You can go and subscribe right now to our YouTube channel to stay in touch and catch all the new videos, or check out our website at graphicpolicy.com. There's a nice link on this end of the video. But as always, thank you for watching. Keep on rocking and keep it geeky.